Okay, so picture this. You're standing in the middle of a quiet residential neighborhood, houses on both sides, kids walking to school. There's nothing particularly remarkable about it at first glance. But right here, in this exact spot, there once stood a 7-story wooden pagoda, somewhere between 45 and 50 meters tall. The estimated height of a 15-story building built over 1,200 years ago. And the name of that temple, the name of that pagoda's home, became the name of this city. Kokubunji. It means, literally, provincial temple. The temple came first. It burned down centuries ago, but the name never left. The year is 741. The capital of Japan is Nara. Emperor Shomu issues an imperial decree. Japan at this time is in serious crisis. Smallpox epidemics have swept across the archipelago. Famines have followed. The social order is fraying. The imperial court needs something, some force, to hold the country together. The emperor's answer is Buddhism. The decree goes out to every province in the land. Build a temple, build a nunnery alongside it. These will be called Kokubunji, provincial temples, and they will serve as centers of prayer for the peace and stability of the nation. But they're not just religious institutions. They're political architecture, a way for the central government in Nara to plant its authority in every corner of the archipelago. Musashi Province, the vast territory covering what is now Tokyo and Saitama, begins construction. And this particular spot, in what would eventually become the western suburbs of Tokyo, is chosen as its site. Why here? The provincial government of Musashi, the Kokufu, was located nearby in what is now Fuchu City. Major roads passed through. Supply lines were manageable. But perhaps most importantly, the geology and geography of this location were ideal. Running east to west through this area is a dramatic natural escarpment, a cliff edge where the Musashino Plateau drops away sharply. The locals call it the Hake, and at the base of that cliff, freshwater springs emerge from the ground, the kind of reliable water source you need when you're building something enormous. And what they built here was enormous. The completed Musashi Kokubunji temple complex covered an area of 8 cho east to west and 5 cho north to south. Laid over a modern map, it would swallow entire neighborhoods. At the center of the complex stood the kondo, the main hall, the lecture hall, the middle gate, and rising above all of it, the 7-story pagoda, estimated at somewhere between 45 and 50 meters tall, the equivalent of a 15-story building today, in wood, in the 8th century. Along the western edge of the complex ran the Tosando Musashi Road, the official highway connecting the capital to the provincial government. Every official, every messenger, every courier who traveled that road would have looked up at this pagoda rising above the plain. 600 years pass. Japan has changed entirely. The elegant aristocratic world of the Nara period is long gone. The country is now ruled by warriors. The Kamakura shogunate has governed Japan for over a century, and in 1333 it begins to fall. The Battle of Bubaigawara, fought just a few kilometers from here. Nida Yoshisada leads his forces against the shogunate's army and defeats them. The Kamakura shogunate's days are numbered. In the chaos and fighting of this period, the Musashi Kokubunji temple complex is said to have burned. The great halls, the lecture halls, the 7-story pagoda, gone. According to temple tradition, Only the principal image, a statue of Yakushi Nyorai, the Buddha of healing, survives. 2 years later, in 1335, it is said that Nida Yoshisada rebuilt a small hall to house that statue. It was nothing compared to what had stood there before. But that small act of reconstruction is the thread that connects to the temple that stands in the neighborhood today. The great temple complex was gone, but the name wasn't. The villages around the ruins kept calling themselves Kokubunji. The temple had burned, the pagoda had fallen, but the place name had embedded itself so deeply into the landscape that nothing, not fire, not war, not centuries of abandonment, could remove it. After the destruction of the great temple complex, this area settles into a long, quiet life as agricultural land. Then, in the middle of the Edo period, the land receives a new designation. The villages of Kokubunji were incorporated into the falconry grounds of the Owari Tokugawa clan, one of the 3 senior Tokugawa branch families, second in prestige only to the shogun himself. For generations, stretching from the mid-18th century all the way to the end of the shogunate in the 1860s, this land is managed as hunting territory. The paths that the falconry wardens walked along the base of the Hake Escarpment still exist today. They're called Otaka no Michi, the falconry path, a narrow trail that follows the spring water flowing out of the cliff face. That water has its own story. According to legend, in the year 848, a woman named Tamazukuri Kamachi came to this place. She was suffering from a serious illness. For 21 days, she prayed to Yakushi Nyorai at the Kokubunji temple. On the last day, a child appeared to her and told her to purify herself in a nearby pond. She did, and her illness vanished. Her true appearance, her real form, was restored. The pond has been called Masugata no Ike, the pond of the true form, ever since. Legend aside, the springs are real. The water that seeps out of the base of the Hake has been sustaining human life in this area for centuries, as washing water, as drinking water, as irrigation. In 1985, Japan's Ministry of the Environment designated the Otaka no Michi spring water system as one of Japan's 100 finest water sources. The water still flows today. April 1889. A new force arrives in this quiet agricultural landscape. The Kobu Railway, the predecessor of what is now the J.R. Chuo Line, opens between Shinjuku and Tachikawa. On the first day of operation, there are exactly 5 stations: Shinjuku, Nakano, Sakai, now Musashi Sakai, Kokubunji, and Tachikawa. Kokubunji is one of the original 5. There's a story that has been told in this area for generations. The original planned route, so the story goes, was going to run further south, through what is now Fuchu City. But local farmers rose up in protest. The steam engines, they said, would kill their silkworms with the smoke. The sparks would cause fires. And so the route was shifted north, up onto the Musashino Plateau. Whether that story is entirely true is a matter of debate among historians. What historians point to is that the plateau route had real technical advantages: solid ground, a more direct line toward Tachikawa and Hachioji. The engineering case for this route was strong from the start. But whatever the combination of factors, a local landowner named Koyagi Kuichiro stepped forward and made available approximately 6,000 tsubo of land to make the station possible. One person's decision about their land shaped the location of a station that would define this city's entire modern history. The railway doesn't stop there. In 1894, the Kawago Railway opens, running from Kokubunji northeast toward Kawago. In 1928, the Tamagawa Lake Railway opens, running toward the Murayama Reservoir to the northwest. These two lines are rivals, separate companies, separate agendas, separate tracks. Then comes Tsutsumi Yasujiro. Tsutsumi is one of the great empire builders of 20th century Japanese business. He acquires these competing railway companies one by one and consolidates them. By 1945, the modern Seibu Railway has taken form. The reason Kokubunji Station has this unusual structure today, with JR lines and Seibu lines running in separate configurations, is that it still carries the physical memory of that consolidation. Different companies, different origins, eventually forced together under one roof. As the 20th century advances, Kokubunji takes on a different character. The area around what is now Tokyo Keizai University, a quiet green campus, a short walk from the station, was the site of the Nanbu factory of the Chuo Kogyo Company during World War II. The Nambu pistol, the standard sidearm of the Imperial Japanese Army's officer corps through the Pacific War. It was manufactured here, along with machine guns, autocannons, and weapons developed for installation on aircraft, in coordination with the Army Aviation Technology Research Institute at Tachikawa Air Base nearby. At its peak, the facility employed thousands of workers during the war years. On July 28, 1945, this factory is recorded as one of the designated targets for American bombing. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey documented this facility, aerial photographs, attack records. The paper trail of a factory considered significant enough to destroy. The war ends. The factory disappears. People returning from Manchuria and the Korean Peninsula need somewhere to live. Housing is built. Agricultural fields and woodlands are converted to residential land. Universities establish campuses. Research institutes are founded. A perfectly ordinary suburban neighborhood spreads across the landscape. The people walking past that campus today have no particular reason to know what was made there. In the late 1960s and into the 70s, Japan experiences its own version of the cultural upheavals happening across the industrialized world. Along the Chuo Line, the railway running west from Shinjuku out through the suburbs, something starts to happen. Koenji, Kichijoji, Kokubunji. 3 stations, 3 neighborhoods. All 3 sharing the suffix ji in their names, the kanji character for temple. They become known collectively as the Sandera, the 3 temples, and they function as the centers of Tokyo's counterculture scene. Kokubunji developed a reputation as a place where the currents of that era collected. Young people looking for something outside the mainstream, something that pushes back against the dominant culture, find their way here. The global counterculture of the 1960s and 70s has its Japanese equivalent, and part of it runs along this stretch of the Chuo Line. In 1975, a coffee shop opens near the south side of the station. It's called Honyarado. In 1977, a singer-songwriter named Nakayama Rabi takes over the place. She'd been recording since 1972. People called her the female Bob Dylan of Japan. Under her stewardship, Honyarado becomes a crossroads, a place where music, poetry, and the particular spirit of that era in this particular neighborhood come together under one roof. Tokyo Keizai University, the same institution whose campus now sits on the former weapons factory site, conducted a research project called Kokubunji 1976. It documents the testimonies of people who were there, folk music as resistance, the coffee shops as a form of cultural opposition, the record of a neighborhood in a specific year doing something that doesn't get written into the standard histories. That culture is not entirely gone. In one corner of the historical park, flat stones lie arranged on the ground. These are the foundation stones of the 7-story pagoda, the base that held up a wooden tower between 45 and 50 meters tall. They haven't moved. Over 1,300 years, these stones have sat here through the burning of the temple complex, through the battles of the Kamakura period, through the Edo falconry wardens walking past, through the arrival of the steam railway, through the weapons factory of World War II, through the housing developments of the post-war years, through the folk music and the coffee shops of the 1970s, through the construction of the towers that now rise nearby. The stones didn't move. Kokubunji. The name is like those stones. The temple burned. The land became farms. The farms became a weapons factory. The factory became a university campus. The fields became a residential neighborhood. And through all of it, the name stayed. The water is still flowing. Along Otaka no Michi, the spring water seeps out of the base of the hake and runs along the narrow path. The same water that was flowing when the Owari falconers walked this route. The same water that fed the rice paddies of the Edo period villages. Still moving, still cold, still coming out of the same rock. Cities change, buildings change, people change, but a place name carries everything that ever happened there, everything that burned, everything that was built, everything that was lost. It holds all of it, and it doesn't let go. If you made it this far, thank you. If you want to see more stories like this from the parts of Japan that don't make it into the travel guides, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.